I'm Ray Rickman, Executive Director of Stages of Freedom. And increasingly, I'm known also as a black historian, particularly on Rhode Island history. Though I know some other things about Du Bois and King and slavery and a whole lot of things. About 3 weeks ago, a 5 or 6-year-old kid asked me, do you swim? And I get that all the time. We pay for 500 kids to learn to swim, and when I meet some of them, they ask me, do you swim? And so he asked me, and I said, of course I swim. I hadn't been swimming since September, but I swim. And then he said something that no kid has ever asked me, no 5, 6, 7-year-old has ever asked me. He said, tell me about the African American Museum. I haven't been yet. And I was surprised. Well, I haven't been yet. I've been invited twice, and I just don't get there. My brother Wade went, called me, said, come on down, we're going. I didn't go. So when this 5-year-old asked me 3 weeks ago, I said, I'm going. I'm not going to be embarrassed again. So off I went, day after Christmas, to see the African American Museum. It blew my socks off. It's quite the statement. I've been in the Louvre, okay? I've been in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. This is probably the emotional museum of my lifetime. Now, up to last Friday, my emotional museum was the Holocaust Museum. I've been twice, and the first time I went, I had to stop. I was in the Hall of Shoes, and they have thousands of pairs of shoes that Jewish people took off before they went into the gas chambers. And it will do a job on you. So that was my emotional museum. Stunningly well-built design. It's a museum that tells a story, a horrific story, and you are moved by it or you don't have a brain or a heart. So every time I go to Washington, off I go to the Holocaust Museum. And I went this time on Saturday morning. But on Friday, I stood in line for 55 minutes to get into the African American Museum, which may have the best spot on the mall because it's the last museum before the Washington Monument, closest to the White House. And such an important site for such a museum. And you stand there, and it's 55 degrees, and it's almost a party. And they're families. I would tell you 90% of the people, and I'm sure it had to do with the holiday, but they're families of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. The grandmother, the son, the grandchildren, the wife. It's just fabulous in front of me and behind me. I talked to them, Delaware and Maryland, they were from, close-in people. But there were hundreds in front of me and hundreds behind me at all times. And I got in the museum, and I went to the top level and the next level and the next level, and then they announced it's closing, leave. I gave the museum an A+, and I left, having missed what I have been told, the basement level, which is extraordinary. Now, did you hear me? I gave the museum an A+. I left. And a friend of mine told me they'd be open late, unannounced, on Saturday night, so I decided not to go in the regular time, stand in line for another hour, and be with crowds. I went at 10 minutes to 5. It took me 5 minutes to get in, that's all. And we're not shoulder to shoulder. The place is probably only 50% full. And I went downstairs into the cafeteria and ate early dinner. And by early dinner, all I had was macaroni and cheese, extraordinary macaroni and cheese. Other people were having soul food, and anyway, it's fabulous food in a nice restaurant. Then I went over and got on the elevator. Elevator holds 110 people. This is an elevator. on you go, down you go, to begin the journey up. And that's why they put slavery, the beginning of African Americans in America, in the basement. So you begin. Now think about how horrific the journey was from Africa. You're captured, you're bound, you are generally in metal, attached to another human being, particularly if you're a man. And 350 people on average are put into the hold of a slave ship. Remember, many of them from Rhode Island, DeWolf, and Brown, into the hold for this journey that changes everything about who you are, destroys your family, your religion, all culture, and enslaves you for a lifetime. Less than 0.1% of Africans escaped. So here you are, an economic, part of an economic engine, and again, particularly for Rhode Island. And in the basement of the museum, deep down, you feel it. It's the most extraordinary museum I've ever been in. I urge you to go. Happy New Year.